In already. So many people have seen it. Let's talk Kong.
Yeah, so basically, I went into this with a sense of trepidation. Kong is directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts, who directed one of my favourite small indie films of last few years called Last Kings of Summer, which, as you'll remember, I have raved on about ever since it came out a few years ago. I think it was 2013. I just absolutely loved it. It's this very small sort of Stand By Me like coming-of-age story with a really quirky sensibility to it. And going from that to Kong is even more of a sort of leap than, for example, Gareth was going from doing monsters to doing, Godzilla.
At least there was a logic behind it.
Yes, it made some kind of sense. I have to say that I think that, as with Godzilla, what Jordan Vogt-Roberts has managed to do is to leave his thumbprints all over something which is a huge studio behemoth. I mean, I think it's, $200 million worth of movie. And
wow.
Whenever that sort of thing happens, it's always a wrestling match between you and the film. And I think that there clearly has been a wrestling match, but I think what's really pleasing about it is how much of Jordan Vogt-Roberts is in the film. And also, I have to say, how much I enjoyed it. I know that the reviews have been mixed, but I really, really enjoyed it. So we start, there's a thing in 1944, Somewhere Over the Pacific, which has got a setup which is basically kind of, Hell in the Pacific. Then we move to 1973, said there, end of the Vietnam War. There's a lovely line early on, mark my words, there'll never be a more messed up time in Washington. Something which, obviously, when they made the film seemed pertinent, but now seems even more pertinent. So Nixon is in the White House declaring retreat and peace with honour. But John Goodman wants to go to Skull Island because he's a bug hunter. He knows that he thinks there's something there. And basically the way they sell it to the military is, look, the Russians are going to be looking there very, very soon, so you have to take us. So the next thing it's Apocalypse Now meets The Land That Time Forgot. And in so many ways, that pitch seems at first absurd, but actually, as the film goes on, makes a lot more sense. So right from the fact that they are literally coming out of the Vietnam War. I mean, obviously, you've got the jukebox soundtrack, very much like Apocalypse Now, which has got, White Rabbit, Black Sabbath, Paranoia, which is played very much like Ride of the Valkyrie. When they arrive at the island, the plot demands that they immediately start bombing because they want to shake up what's under the ground and find out whether there's anything under the ground. So it is essentially sort of transposing all that stuff into Skull Island. There's a central character, obviously, called Conrad. I mean, these things are, they're writing it sort of quite large. Tom Hiddleston saying Kong was just defending his territory, which when you're coming off the back of a, story about Vietnam, and, fighting the VC and all that sort of stuff. So all these kind of things,
the Viet
Cong are all written into, and Sam Jackson saying this is one war we're not going to lose. So all that stuff is written into the fabric of the film itself. Then what you have is let's call them the monsters for the purposes of this argument. One of the things that I've heard people say is that you see Kong too early on and it's not a huge reveal. I actually think this is very deliberate because I was very pleased to see Kong early on and indeed to see the other creatures early on, because what the film does is it has a monstrous delight in them. Clive Barker once said that one of the big problems with monster movies was that in the first reel you see a foot, in the second reel you see a hand, in the third reel you see a silhouette, and in the fourth reel you see the whole thing for 4 seconds before it's blown up by an atom bomb, despite the fact that actually we all go to watch the monsters. Now, in terms of when we have the monster action stuff, which is, Kong, these kind of lizard creatures, spiders, all this sort of stuff, one of the things I like most about it is the editing pace is a lot slower than is common nowadays. Michael Bay movies which cut every half a second, so you can never tell what's going on. These films, these sequences, these special effects sequences are done with a much slower, sort of circling, elegiac pace almost, that is attempting to capture the beauty of things. There are certain images that really stuck with me, of Kong standing up with the moon behind him and the helicopters coming in, of Tom Hiddleston surrounded by green smoke with the samurai sword, with the with the flying beasts. All that stuff I thought actually just on a visual level worked really well. I like the fact that the film was, it seemed to me, to be sort of very cine literate, not just the Apocalypse Now and the Hell in the Pacific, but there's one moment which, this may well be just me, but there's one shot in it that I thought that is definitely a reference to the post of a cannibal Holocaust. There is...
that might be just you.
It might be, but it might not. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'll ask this. When anyone watches the film, okay, write in next week and tell me whether you think that's what that was as well. I think that the script has its ups and downs. There are things in the script that are very clunky. There are also things in the script that are very funny. I think the line when they're on the island and they find John C. Reilly has got this boat which is made out of a plane, and one of the characters says, "Stop shaking your head," says, "It looks like it's made out of pure tetanus." I laughed about that for about 5 minutes. When John C. Reilly says, "Did we win the war?" and the answer is, "Which one?" I mean, I thought all that stuff, all that kind of political playfulness was woven well enough into the story that it didn't just seem to be something that was tacked on. And this is, I'm several hands involved in the screenwriting, obviously. And I enjoyed it. I was never bored. I thought that the moments of spectacle were properly spectacular. Yes, there are things that are creaky. Yes, there are compromises that are obviously to do with making something that is part of an ongoing, huge studio franchise. And yes, there are moments in it in which you can start to feel that it's tending much more towards the sort of the ordinarily generic. But there are also things in it that are so odd and so peculiar and so quirky. The way in which the slow motion is used to give a sense of scale. And so, incidentally, I saw it in 2D. There is a 3, is that right?
Yeah, in IMAX, I saw it in 2.
Okay, I saw it in 2. And I did think that it had that sense of scale. I thought there were moments, there were monster moments that worked really well in terms of scale. And that's always the most difficult thing to achieve. I thought you did think these things are huge. Yeah. And I also thought that just from the level of, enjoyable, playful sort of cross-generic messing. As I said, that central idea of taking Land That Time Forgot and Apocalypse Now and putting them all together and seeing what comes out of the mix actually worked rather well. So having gone in with a sense of great trepidation, I thought it was really good fun. I was surprised by how much I liked it. And I'm very pleased. I think I like it more than you do, for example. And I mean, it may well be that I'm seeing nerdy stuff in there that isn't there. But it's like there's a wonderful thing with Roger Ebert in that Life Itself documentary. He's talking about the Roger Ebert screenings, and they show a film. He says, here's what happens. Every year we show a film. And at any point in the thing, somebody can shout out, stop, and we'll look at the film and we'll find something new in it that we've never seen before. It's not there, but we'll find it anyway.
I think it is true that there are some moments that are funny. The script, in general, is woeful. Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't think so, but
I think it's. I mean, I just thought it was cringy, and I think I enjoyed it enormously. So
so you did enjoy it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, fine.
And the monster stuff is terrific, and the monster battles which you were talking about are some of the best I've ever seen. So I thought that was brilliant. I'm just not sure, because if they wanted to have that Vietnam meets Kong idea, which is a great idea, which by and large works.
Okay, I'm glad. Fine.
Why do you put Tom Hiddleston as the lead character? If that had been a grizzled American vet, I think it would have worked much better. And why is he not wearing a shirt?
Well, because he's Tom Hiddleston in The Land That Time Forgot. Doug McClure. I mean, okay, let me ask you, yeah. John C. Reilly, what did you think of John C. Reilly sort of channeling Dennis Hopper?
I didn't like that story. As soon as he arrived, I thought it became a farce.
Okay.
And I thought it really undercut the sense of peril and sense of genuine threat that had been there. And as soon as John Reilly turns up, you go, oh, okay, it's just for jokes now. We're just supposed to have a laugh. So I got what he was doing. I just wish he hadn't been doing it.
Okay, you see, you had mentioned this to me before, and I have to say I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that it unbalanced it and tipped it just over into silly, wacky comedy. It wasn't like a Judge Dredd sidekick. I mean, Stallone.
When he turns up, I just thought, you are kidding. Is this going to be a farce now? But from now to the end, we're just playing it for laughs. So.